What's going on, people? It's Mark here, Marky Sports. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, man. Today is the first fantasy football video we are making officially. We put some content out. You see some content out on the website. I'll put the link down in the description to check out some of my rankings and all that. But today we are going to focus on the number one overall pick, the number one player in fantasy, and why I think it should be Bijan Robinson, not Christian McCaffrey, and not Breece Hall heading into 2024. Stay tuned to learn more as to why. Before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button below. Check out some of the other videos that I got. If you guys are fans of fantasy football, if you love Denver sports, the Avalanche, the Nuggets, and of course, the Denver Broncos, you're going to love some of the content. But certainly fantasy, we're going to have a lot of great stuff coming. And, weekly rankings, mock drafts, all that good stuff while the season comes on. So appreciate the love. And don't forget to like and comment because I love to know what you'd like for me to post next and what other kind of content you want for me to see. So be sure to check it out. All right, guys, let's get into it. Kind of a hot take. Not really. I've kind of seen a little bit of that floating around. But I personally believe that 2024 is the year for Bijan Robinson to overtake Christian McCaffrey as the top overall pick in fantasy football this year. And there's several reasons as to why and why it makes sense to put your chips in the basket for Bijan Robinson. So before we get into sharing this pretty cool data that I found on this website, the website is called fantasypoints.com. Shout out to them, man. They got some really great comment. I'll also link that down below in the description. But when we think about fantasy and we talk about ranking players, I always think about several different situations. A, obviously the talent of the player, right? Are they just a damn good football player? Secondly, the system that they're in. Is it a running back friendly system? What's the history of that look like? And then for running backs, three specifically, are they three down backs? Are they going to be on the field a lot? What's their snap count going to look like? Are they going to need to go off the field during obvious passing downs or passing situations or not? So what I call that is game flow dependent or game flow independent. And so that's something you want. You always want running backs that are as game flow independent as possible, regardless of the situation. There's somebody that's going to be in. And fourth, of course, is always injury history. Now, for some guys, that could be bumped up a little bit more, but you want to look at age, injury history, predictability. You can't really predict injuries, but some guys are more susceptible based off injury, based off of the amount of carries, touches in their career, their age, etc. So we look at all that. And when you look at all of those things, those are all factors as to why Bijan Robinson should be the number one player taken this year. First of all, he's unbelievably talented. Next level, kind of one of the elite generational type of talents coming out of Texas, coming out of college. It's why he was drafted so highly, similar to how Saquon Barkley was for the Giants. Just ridiculous talent, big guy. I'm just going to go off the cuff here. He's 5'11", 6'1", 230 pounds, running 4.3s. He's a beast. He's an absolute beast. And so he can do it all. So he checks that box for sure. But secondly is the scheme. And the scheme this year is night and day different than the scheme that he was in last year under Arthur Smith in Atlanta. Obviously, Arthur Smith, they love to run the ball. And for whatever reason, he had this weird love for Tyler Algier. I'll never understand. That should be gone out the window. But this year with Zach Robinson and obviously with Kirk Cousins, this should be a perfect mix for Bijan Robinson to be an elite fantasy football player. First of all, last year, sometimes you would think a really good quarterback could hamper them because they're going to throw the ball more, and they definitely are going to throw the ball more. But last year, it was easy for defenses to play the Falcons. They stacked the box, they stopped the run game, and they forced Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota, whoever the hell the quarterback was. This year, they're going to have to respect the pass game. It's going to have a lot lighter boxes, and it's going to open up a ton more opportunities for Bijan Robinson. Secondly is Zach Robinson. All right. Zach Robinson is the offensive coordinator that they brought over from the Los Angeles Rams. He was with, obviously, Raheem Morris when he was with the staff too. And one thing you'll know is if he's going to run anything similar to a Sean McVay scheme, Sean McVay schemes not only produce ridiculously productive fantasy running backs, Todd Gurley, Kyron Williams as a couple of different examples, they really love to have a primary running back. They don't like to do the running back by committee. They like to have a guy that can be out there and give them versatility with all looks so that there's no tell as to what the defense is going to do. You can even see it last year with Kyron Williams, right? He's an undersized guy. He's somebody that really was never projected to be a full-time guy. But when he was healthy, he was getting all the work. And he was out there being productive and killing it. Even in 12 games, he crushed it and finishes as a top 10 fantasy running back. So Bijan Robinson's got all the talent in the world, and he's going to have some wonderful opportunities when it comes to this. So there's that. Now, thirdly, you talk about, injury history, right? Not much of it. Pretty clean slate in college. Had a couple of dings and dents last year that he missed a couple of games, but he's 22 years old. He's got he's going into year 2. So he's got a year of NFL football under his belt. He's able to go in the strength and conditioning program. Year 1 to year 2 is when you always see a huge leap for rookies in general, none more than in the running back position. Historically, that is just what you see. And we'll get into that a little bit more in talking about age curves and all that good stuff. And another bonus for him is he's going to be playing a lot of games indoors. Obviously in Atlanta, they play indoors. He's going to have a couple games, a game versus the Saints. That's going to be indoors. And with the other divisional teams, they're not going to have a lot of weather factors, but he's going to have a lot of good weather games, good game script games, which is always a bonus. That's more of a week-to-week thing, but those are just things that are a plus that I always like to look at as well. Overall, when it comes to fantasy running backs, when you're comparing them to Christian McCaffrey and you're trying to make the argument against C-Mac, it's hard, man. Listen, I'm a Denver native. C-Mac's our guy here. We love him. He's amazing. He's unbelievably talented. But I start to get concerned now because he's entering his year 28 season. That's when you start to see a lot of running backs really start to decline. But not just from an age standpoint. That 7th season is typically when you start to see a pretty big fall off. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen to everybody, but he's definitely going to be a little bit more susceptible to injuries. In addition to that, he's at 1,300 career carries. Some of the benchmarks is once they get to that 1,000 carry, like an actual rushing attempt carries, you start to see a little bit of a fall off. He was over that, prior to last year. He still had a really productive year, but that's not even taking into account the over 500 receptions that he's had. So he's touched the ball roughly 1,800 times in his career. Listen, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of like, oh, he's touched it 1,800. If it was 1,600, it'd be better. But those are just some things to take into account. Prior to last year, he did have, basically 4 seasons that were plagued by injury in one way or another, whether he missed like a big majority of the season or parts here and there. There was he was hampered by injuries quite a bit in those seasons prior. So don't let that be forgotten about when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers are also notorious for just understanding that their scheme is so damn good and they can bring in guys and just figure it out. So, if there's some sort of a fall off in production, you might be able to see that. But another thing that makes Christian McCaffrey so elite is his pass catching ability, right? And I think that's what brings him to another level. 67 catches last year, ton of catches, a ton of touchdowns. I don't have the exact number in terms of touchdowns in front of me, but the guy is extremely talented. And just to give you an idea, actually last year he had 21 total touchdowns. He had 7 receiving touchdowns, 14 rushing. So ridiculous numbers because the opportunities, and they'll definitely scheme some things up for him. But I think that the injury concern is something that is going to be a big factor for sure moving forward. And when you look at Bijan Robinson has all of the ability in the world to be a 60, 70, 80 catch a year back. He had 58 last year, and it certainly could have and should have been a lot more had he not really been, not dominating all the touches and all the snaps like I think he will this season. So I think that you can expect Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson across the board to have similar amount of opportunities, similar rush yards, similar amount of receiving yards. And I would give the edge to Bijan just strictly based off of, I think the schemes are going to be very similar now. And I think that I just like the fact that he's a little bit younger and that he's got a lot less tread on his tires. He doesn't have the injury history like Christian McCaffrey does. So let me know what you guys think. Who's your number one running back? You can even make the argument that it would be something that it would be like Breece Hall could be in that category. But I'd like to know what you guys think in the comment. So while we get into that, let me go ahead and just share this screen that we have here for you. Now, what you're seeing here, and shout out to Fantasy Points again, this is running back fantasy performance by age. And it's a nice little curve. It gives you a really good visual to see, okay, where do running backs tend to peak and when do they start to fall off? On the bottom here, you can see, that's every season that they play. And then the percentages is showing, baseline career averages and then where they end up making the leap, right? So, in year one, generally, they are going to take a huge leap from year one to year two. Now, obviously, there's a lot of players that kind of affect this model, right? Like, for example, Saquon Barkley, we talked about him earlier. He had a really, really, really good rookie season. So you're not going to expect a ginormous jump from year one to year two. So it would kind of go against this a little bit. But you can see roughly 85%, 86, call it 86% is the baseline, jumping up to 122% for the baseline. So you see a 42% increase in overall production from year one to year two, right? And that's something that I think is common with running backs, because a lot of the times with rookie running backs, yes, you can see opportunities. You can, they're going to see the field quicker. They're going to get more snaps more quickly than other rookies at other positions might, just because there's not so much of a learning curve. You can have rookie running backs come in and dominate right away. But a lot of the times it is a little bit of a cautionary tale. They like to kind of ease rookies in, feel out the role that they have. An example is Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Jahmyr Gibbs last year showed all of the talent, but they still wanted to mix in David Montgomery early in the year, a veteran that they kind of knew a little bit more about while they were still figuring out Jahmyr Gibbs. And then as the season went on, it was just like the Jahmyr Gibbs show. So that's why you can see that production jump up. With Bijan, obviously he was a very high draft pick. He got a lot more opportunities than a typical rookie running back would, but he was still hampered a little bit, and he was still spelled a little bit by Tyler Algier. He just doesn't seem like he was given the keys and given the full reins to that offense. And I think that you can really expect that big leap. And Bijan Robinson was still a very, very productive fantasy player last year, but I think he can take that to a whole nother level this year. And that's what I'm expecting for it too. And this is a really great and useful graph that you can use really for all of them, for all running backs as a whole, to help you decide. You can see that, between, their years 2 to year 6 are overall the most productive, but really year 2 to 4 is that sweet spot where you can really see consistent production overall that leads directly to fantasy points. Now, here's the other thing. There's that big drop off, right? A huge drop off. You'll see a little bit of a drop off from year 6 to year 7, but from year 7 to year 8, it's a really big drop off. And this is the territory that Christian McCaffrey is starting to enter, right? So you might start seeing that decline. Now, listen, if you take him number 1 overall, you're still going to get probably a really productive running back. And I'm never rooting for any player to get hurt or to be less productive for whatever reason. But it's just some cautionary tales, just some things to bring to your attention, just some food for thought. While you're sitting there trying to make choices. And this can be relevant for not just the first overall pick, for who you're going to take 3rd, who are you going to take 4th. If you're deciding between, a running back at the tail end of the draft, right? I did a couple mock drafts, and I think it was between Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Can this be relevant for them? Not necessarily, but it could be something that could be helpful, especially later in the draft, right? You start talking about James Conner. It's going to be James Conner versus some other younger, running back. This might be something that could be that deciding factor for you. So let me know what you guys think. I'm curious. Would love to know more. Put some in the comments too. Let me know, who do you guys think is going to be the top fantasy player this year for fantasy, and what kind of videos do you like? Do you guys want me to put some videos about sleepers? Do you have any particular breakdowns from a fantasy standpoint you want me to do for specific players, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do that. Otherwise, guys, I appreciate it. That's all I got for the day. Hope you guys have a great day and spend time with those people that you love the most. Don't forget to do that. Peace out.